Welcome back, peeps. Real Tech Talk episode number 46. And as I say, it only gets bigger and bigger. And I'm going to tell you why. Today, I got my homegirl, Olivia Ramos, on from Deepblocks. And again, I always talk about it. Is it a medicine? Is it a vitamin? And then the second thing is we invest in the human. And today, the human that I bring to you, accomplished, intelligent, construction, real estate, architecture, and tech for the federal government. So sit down, pay attention, and listen to what this lady has to say.
That's why we're here, bro. This is Real Tech Talk. Boom shakalaka. So who the hell are you, bro? You know, what are you into? What do you do? Dude, you can keep it real here. Tell me about these real estate players.
Eric Brody is the managing principal of CEM VC LLC. All opinions expressed by Eric and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of CEM VC LLC. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions. Clients of CEM VC LLC may maintain positions in the securities discussed in this podcast.
Thank you so much for coming from sunny Florida to gray New York to be here with me today.
Thank you for having me. I feel like I should be as like...
What's that? You think what?
No, that was an amazing intro.
I mean, that's my job. That's what we do here, you know? So you know what? Listen, I've been thinking, right? Because people have been asking me, like, how do you choose who's coming on and like the companies and stuff? And I always say it kind of starts with the person. I mean, it just does, right? Like, what makes them tick? Why are they the credible party to be here? So tell us a bit about your background, and then we'll get into Deepblocks, which is fascinating AI, predictive analytics, everything that this audience wants to understand regarding density throughout this country, because it's not just specific. So tell us about your background. I mean, I could spit it out for you, but I'd love to hear it from you.
Absolutely. So just a brief, I started architecture in high school, design architecture senior high, got a bachelor's in architecture.
Wait, let me ask you a question. Were they having you do it like pencil, paper, and then yes. Okay.
That's how it started.
So you were drawing.
Yes, legit. And so got a bachelor's in architecture from University of Florida, still drawing.
Gainesville.
All
right, Gators.
And then a master's in architecture from Columbia University here in the city.
So you came back up to the city. Amazing.
Yes. And then a second master's in real estate development from the University of Miami. And the reason I got that second master's was because I realized the architect was not able to make all the decisions in what gets built. So
which I think, by the way, is so poignant, right? Because the idea architect, which in Latin is master builder, you thought you were making all the decisions, and then you're right. I remember my father told me, he's like, don't be an architect, be a builder developer. There's way too much risk in design, and you still don't get what you want.
Right. Yeah, the industry has been fragmented over, historically. And so I did a second master's in real estate development. I then worked in construction and brokerage and architecture and development. I was just amazed at how fragmented everything was, how many, different data points, software that didn't have data, different languages, people didn't get along, people didn't get aligned with incentives. And so I left the industry and I went to this program, the DARPA Innovation.
Wait, let's go back because I think that is like so true, right?
Yeah.
It's like herding cats, right? People don't understand the paradigm of which you then said you went to construction, architecture, principal side, right? You've got an architect who's responsible for zoning resolution, code, and creating this vision, right? You got the contractors who are required to actually build that vision. You have the principals that are paying everyone, and everyone hates each other, right?
Yeah.
I mean, did you see that firsthand?
I did, and the misaligned incentives, right? So the worse the architecture plans are, the more the contractor can charge. So, I mean, it's not...
Well, let's go back. I agree with you, right? So, and I think it's a paradigm. We even spoke about it one time. I did this episode at The Real Deal and the blueprint about this, which was like, here's a diagram of the simplest paradigm of owner with a line to an architect, with a line to a contractor, and then a dotted line between them. And you go, what's the dotted line mean? Because the thick lines mean contracts. The dotted line is, they're supposed to kind of work together.
Yeah.
And you're like, that's odd. Like, how is that ever supposed to be? And I agree with you. None of their interests are aligned. Right? And then you said, I think, something that was really valuable, which is if the architect's design, and it's not good or bad, it's whether it's fully coordinated, fully thought out, and that would be so many thousands of hours of work, it's impossible. It's not a business that way, right? They got to take old with the new and hope that they're doing it right. And then the contractor, like you're saying, bids that set of drawings, and if there's something wrong, he gets a change order.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, shit, we agree with you.
Yeah. So I felt the end user was being hurt by this. The end product was being hurt by this. The movement of, progress in our cities was being hurt by this. So I left and I went to design software.
Most of us, you get your double PhD. You don't just say dump what you just did for the last decade and move on. How is that a part of who you are, that you are willing to step into the abyss and change? I mean, that's wild.
At the time where I was at Columbia, the dean, Mark Wigley, was talking a lot about big data. Big data was a big conversation back then. And so there was this program at DARPA where for the first time they didn't have a set criteria of what these, contractors needed to build. It was kind of like, let's see what you come up with.
Let's go back.
Yeah.
So define big data for our audience and then tell us what the acronym DARPA is.
DARPA is the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. They invented the internet. They invented the robot dog. Most people know them by that.
And did they invent Area 51?
I don't know.
What are you not telling us? If you were there, you were behind the curtain.
I didn't have any clearance.
Funny enough, we said before this interview that if I asked you anything you weren't allowed to answer, you'd say, yeah, I don't know. So now we know. We're definitely, she knows, everyone. You get her later. You'll find out if there's aliens that exist.
I'm sure there are. But they're the experimental arm of the Department of Defense. And at the time, there were a lot of troops in Afghanistan. There was a lot of data coming in, boxes and boxes of cell phones. Nobody knew how to crawl through them.
So what is the big data? What does that mean just in general to our audience? What would be, if big data was a huge subject at Columbia University when you were there, what does that mean?
It's just all the information that's coming out of everywhere. And at the time, I mean, the name has kind of morphed a little bit. It doesn't mean the same thing, but at the time it was just like this influx of information that nobody knew how to manage, how to structure. For example,
a great analogy is Afghanistan, right? You got cell phones, computers, PDFs, picking up documentation, right? It's all, but that's big data because there's just so much that can come out of anything, videos, whatever it was.
All kinds of things. Okay. So our team's proposal was so confusing to DARPA that they allowed us to be one of the teams.
So here you're at Columbia.
I had graduated already.
So how did you even know that there was an RFP from DARPA about big data?
I didn't know. One of the team members knew.
Okay.
And he had been following DARPA since he was a child. And, I didn't even know what DARPA was, to be honest, at the time.
Okay.
I just thought it was cool. And once I got there, I didn't even know where I was. But I learned so much about big data and about the issues we're having as a country in terms of all this information. And I applied everything I knew from architecture and real estate into that project.
Okay.
And that project, I ended up separating from my team and was like the only solo team, was the only woman in the entire program. And I developed this like 3D sphere that you would use haptic gloves and VR glasses to touch information rather than see information. So if you had a download of 10,000 images, you would be able to classify those images and then see with your fingers, kind of like Braille, which came out of the military, to understand information through touch.
So it's a user experience in order to interface with data. And it reminds me of Minority Report. Do you remember that?
Yeah, absolutely. But there was a lot of visuals to that. This was like, if you were on the ground in the desert and you had no visual, you could use this tool to understand where to go to. And since it's virtual, you can, literally create maps in real time or any kind of information and use it to the touch.
How did you, just like side note, but like, how did you learn that you could take this user experience with goggles and haptic feedback gloves, which means you feel, touch, and taste it? How did you even know that existed enough that that's how you should attack big data? Like, where did that come from?
So I, in architecture school, I was doing a lot of models that I would like create physically. And so at DARPA, I started with physical models. And I would create these models that would be 3D printed. And then the analyst can touch the model. And somebody was like, forget about 3D printing or any physical object. Why don't you go virtual and use haptic gloves? So they sent me to this other lab they had, and I put on haptic gloves, and I understood how that worked, and it kind of blew my mind. And that's, you kind of, figure it out and get a lot of feedback and understand where you have holes.
Listen, I've chilled with you 3 times. I am always like, I'm telling you, we looked at our companies as to like, you invest into principles because sometimes the idea specifically, you don't know exactly how it's going to monetize itself or where, the business revenue will be. It's like, that's wild, right? Because if you can pivot like that into all of these different categories, I mean, like, it just, to me, is just a level of intelligence, not to be like blowing smoke, but like, that's wild to me, until I was at the like abyss where I had to change who and what I was, did I get into tech, but you was a part of your DNA.
I think, architecture has a lot of technology, so it's natural. And also just great suggestions. I think being able to take suggestions is really important, maybe even more than intelligence.
Yeah, like being open to the lens of reality and seeing it for what it is. Yeah. And then when other people give you suggestions, even if they're doing it in sort of a rude manner, but you only hear the grain of truth, I agree with you. It's wild.
So then I took that project to Singularity University, which is a futurist university in Silicon Valley. At the time, it was funded by Google. It was a 3-month program.
So DARPA let you leave? I thought you'd be in like Utah right now and get like your brain melted.
No, it was a set time. They took all those projects with them. You also had the right to develop them.
Okay.
I did. I created several instances, but it required people to have VR and haptic technology at home, and that wasn't going to be as commercial as
maybe now, right? Because of the new goggles, or not even. Agreed.
That was 12 years ago, so I was very early, which is a problem. You can't be that early to the market. So maybe 20 years early. We'll see. It's on the shelf.
Okay.
I'll keep you posted. But I took that to Singularity University. It got me into Singularity University.
And what's Singularity University?
It's a futurist institution. At the time, it had the Global Solutions Program funded by Google. There were 80 people from 40 different countries. And you just 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. exponential technology classes. Like, you just learned exponential technology across science, across everything you can imagine.
Physics, math, I assume it's all STEM, right? STEM subjects?
Yeah, exactly. So exponential technology, blockchain at the time, which I wish I would have paid attention a little bit more to that part. Biomimicry, like all kinds of, nano printing, just like really mind-blowing stuff.
And being exposed to that, allowing your brain to sort of absorb this sort of really experimental stuff is like one of the things, is a reason why I do this, because I get to now have learned something from you as a result of what you were experimenting with. So that's awesome.
So we were also part of Singularity is you have to create a company. You have to convince everyone to join your company on stage to the 80 people, and then you create teams, and you have to pair a global grand challenge to an exponential technology. And our global grand, I actually was pitching the DARPA project. Nobody wanted to join my team. Nobody understood what I was talking about. And so this other gentleman, Bernard Leong, was pitching how to reduce the cost of housing. He was from Singapore. It was really expensive. And so he was so passionate about it, but his background was AI, not the industry.
Gotcha.
So I was like, well, nobody wants to join my team. I'll join his team,
right,
just to inform him how fragmented the whole process is and how he'll never get any efficiency out of it.
Gotcha.
And so I did this whiteboard. I explained to him from like the very beginning of looking at a site and market and demand to all the very last, permitting that you need to like operate. And
so it's up to construction.
Up to the end of construction.
Okay.
And I just wanted him to understand this process that was impossible. And he looked at it and he said, an AI could do this. Because although they're different disciplines, different languages, all of them hand over data from one to the other. And these very weak points are still connections. And therefore you can call it an AI, but we think of it now as a network of AI that communicate and do this work automatically.
But and now that we know a bit about AI, each one of those inputs would need data in order to model, right? Yes. So you're saying, in theory, this could be true.
In theory, an AI could do the entire process. And when I heard that, I had never thought of it that way. And I had left the industry. And all of a sudden, it was like, this could be the rest of my life. Like, this could be a life project.
Okay.
And you said it really well. The data is important. And we realized right away that zoning data, which tells us the future of cities, had not been digitized. So we had to start by digitizing.
So the first thing was, so you saw the problem.
I saw
which is how can we create efficiencies from finding sites, site acquisition, to what we can actually build there, what the economic models are, how we can raise the capital, get the approval, retain the contractor, and just the real estate development process. And you're like, can we bring sort of a AI model to that process? And then so you took the first problem, which was zoning. And why zoning?
So the first problem we tackled as a team was, can we combine some of this logic? So we created a 3D model combined with a financial model. And we raised the first $1 million with just kind of like a tool that nobody could touch. It was just showing people you could actually do a model and a financial model at the same time.
And this is the beginning.
This is the beginning.
Of Deepblocks.
The beginning of Deepblocks.
Okay.
This was already in the accelerator.
And you were in San Fran still? You were still in
I was in Mountain View. We were at the NASA Ames Center. I was there for like 10 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell us about it. So like, what were you able to achieve?
So we were able to achieve the first kind of iteration, a very brief pilot, just to show people that there was a possible future where a 3D model and a financial model would entertain them, like will be interconnected. Nobody had seen that before.
So let's talk through that a little bit.
Yeah.
So you've got a 3D model, meaning you're onboarding the zoning resolution, which is a rules-based model, right?
Not yet.
Okay.
It's literally just a massing and a back of the envelope financial model.
And then, but where did the massing come from? Was it your understanding of the zoning resolution? You massed it?
Right
like
now,
you plugged it in?
At this point, it didn't even matter. Right
Okay.
now, it's just like, this is the product that we're building.
Okay.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Soon we realized that model required that data. And that data was more valuable than the model itself.
Got you.
And then we tried to buy that data and it just didn't exist.
Okay. And then what?
And so we were like, okay, so we have to digitize it.
So you decide, I'm going to digitize the code resolution where? What geography was it?
We started in Miami. At
Okay.
that point, we were already in Miami because half of our round was Miami developers.
Which is fascinating. You were able to raise that money based off of your ideas, based off of your credibility. Like, people don't realize that, right? People wanted to invest in you to allow you to try to create something.
And at the time, my co-founder, Udi Wolfowitz, who had like 15 years of AI, like deep AI experience for Mobileye, who ended up selling to Intel, we would sit and I would understand all the development side and he would understand all the AI side. At that point, AI was still kind of foreign to me.
Right.
I learned most of what I know from him. And so investors would be like, is this possible? And he would be like, this is easy. And then like, they would just write a check.
Yeah.
Because they would see the two things they'd never seen before, the combination of the 3D model, and then we would, discuss AI and discuss how we can digitize zoning. And for us, it seemed like just a seamless and thing to do. And people.
So this is what year?
This is 2016, 2017.
So how did you hoover up enough data so that you could then create a learning model off of the zoning resolution in the building code? How did you digitize that?
So we digitized Miami. And by that time, when we knew what we had to do and we knew how long it would take to just get some data sets in place, that's Udi left. He was like, well, this is like, it's going to take too long. And it took 3 years to digitize 30 cities.
So you took 30 cities, and what is it though? Was it a rules-based engine? You have coders just literally reading and then coding the zoning resolution?
We had to train people to understand what the zoning was.
Got you.
And we had to first make a really important decision. Are we going to go deep into a city and then try to replicate that across many cities? Or are we going to go shallow and pick the top headline points in zoning and try to do it as many cities as
Right,
possible?
because you're thinking about it financially. It's not like you need to know the door swing on the 88 bathroom needs to be 32 inches as a part of your understanding of zoning and then a financial model.
Yes.
Right?
And also, what was the end goal? We need to keep our moonshot really clear, right? Our end goal is to create an AI that tells us where to invest and have some arbitrage opportunities to even just hold and sell as soon as possible and get a good return.
So let's just back that up, because what you just stated to me is what's fascinating. There's a specific goal that's an economic and a financial one, which is what business is about. And you're saying, can we do either business intelligence or predictive analytics as to where we should invest our capital dollars? That was the goal,
That was
right?
the goal.
And you're doing it through real estate development, which is where should we put our dollars in order to create either housing, industrial, data centers, right? You're saying either new build or gut renovation of existing, but it's in the construction sector. You're not saying we're just going to renovate and add value to a multifamily.
We can, because all that requires zoning data, whether it's acquisition, redevelopment, or renovation. You want to know if you're spending the dollars, but then you're going to, break it down later because you could actually build 3x.
Correct.
So these decisions on renovation should be informed by zoning. They're not necessarily right now. But yeah, so that was the decision, and it was two choices, right? Go on the investment side, which for me is the most exciting, or go deep and try to make the best building possible. It might have been my initial intention, but this side of investment, looking at real estate investment as a stock, I think is the most exciting part.
And that was 2017. I mean, that's super early. I mean, I didn't think about predictive it's theoretically, I think it's fascinating. It's like, tell me where I should go to invest my dollars, right? I mean, it's the holy grail, right? The largest companies out there are hiring thousands of data scientists to do what you are trying to achieve.
Right. And then you can see around that time, in 2019, the stock market tipped over to have more algorithmic trading than human trading. So this was a thing that was already happening in a parallel market. And we were inspired by that. And there's no reason why it can't happen.
So what are the steps now? So you're early. You're way early. You're having like an incredible idea. I agree with you. It's obvious that has a ton of value. So now how do you achieve that? Because if we go back to sort of, and we're going to be speaking about it, we just spoke, you're not going to be at RecCon, I am, which is, here's a data. Then you have to have a learning model. What is it called? What is it really over the data? A learning model? No. What is it that now you're creating the network over that data?
We're going really deep into large language models.
Right. So now, so you're creating a model, right, over that data. So now you need to grab the data, create a model, then connect it to the next models that you have created, right, to come to a conclusion as to this prediction as to where you should invest.
Yes, and that came much later. So one of our early advisors was Neil Jacobstein, who's like one of the fathers of AI in Silicon Valley. And he told us, take a product to market without AI and really understand the pain points.
Okay.
And like I said, it took us a long time to digitize enough cities just to understand what could be automated. Forget about intelligent, right? So we got to the point where we kind of skip a few things. We've digitized 250 cities. We're now in a position to train AI to digitize on its own.
Can we I just want to because I don't think the audience understands. Think about that experimentation. Like, you didn't know if you could get to the end result that you're looking for. And your first business was literally like, we just have to get this data, right? Because it's who owns the data becomes the winner, I'm told, in the future. Is where's that specific data set where you have thought from day one, I'm going to use this data in the future to make a prediction on real estate, right?
Yeah.
Anyone can say, well, I can get Google or CoStar or anyone else. They never thought of taking that data for a specific purpose, and that is your advantage. Yes. Because you are only taking information to inform that decision as to where to invest, not just taking data. Okay, cool. So then what?
Okay, so the tricky part about having a heavy and deep technology operation is that investors want you to sell, right? So every step along the way, we had to create these offshoot products from our goal in order, which I think it's really smart. It's the way to do it is to test the market. So this 3D model, financial model, was not as popular. It's become more popular now. When we had some of the zoning data, we were able to do this scanner where you can now look at a city and say, where can I build 200 units where there's currently less than 10,000 square feet, right? Before that would require hundreds of hours of canvassing manually. And now it's under a minute. You have. So
give us the case study. I am a commercial real estate broker, right? My client says, I'm looking to invest X amount of capital into this city, but I need specific density, right? If it's less than 20,000 square feet, I'm not interested. Right. Are you stating you could now plug that in? You give the 40 addresses or the 40 lots where that makes sense, and you've just pinpointed exactly where they should be focusing their energy?
Exactly.
Wow, that's an incredible tool.
It changes the paradigm a little bit of waiting for brokers to bring you deals. They kind of scan the market, they find the deals, and then they work with brokers to see if any of them could work, which is slightly different. And so our customers are doing that now. So along the way, we've had to create these products that teach us a lot about what's valuable. So now we're training models to not only extract that data automatically, which would be amazing because it's really hard work to keep that data updated. That will be done automatically, but also we can now ask it to predict. So if every quarter we scrape these zoning ordinances and we understand how it's changed over time, we can begin to say it looks like this is the next area to be rezoned, more density. That's where you want to buy, especially if all the other metrics like the demographic growth and shifting and income and all this stuff is also aligning with that thesis. So we have two operations. One has that product, that's the Deepblocks Pro, and the other one is ChatDB, which is all about demographic data across every single market in the US. So the combination of the two can get us closer to have high certainty on that arbitrage that we're looking for.
It's amazing. And would you say that, like, let's say city planning is thinking about rezoning, they're looking at the same information that you are, meaning you're almost caught up to and probably have better data and information as to where it should be rezoned. Meaning, with high probability, this area will be rezoned, even if city planning doesn't even know that that's the area yet?
Exactly. Yes.
That's wild.
Because it's a pattern that they have.
Right.
Right? And we could also help cities understand where they should rezone.
Right.
Which would be kind of a conflict of interest if we're also investing in those places. But let's say without that, the idea is, yes, we can understand if something is likely to be rezoned or not. Let's say if you buy a mall, is the city going to accept a multifamily building? We'll be able to see what the risk levels are. We'll be able to understand city sentiment, how flexible they are. And this is across thousands of cities eventually. Of course. So it's you don't have to know the city or know someone in the city to understand how the city works. But more importantly, you could see how zoning shifts and predict that next line of change.
Especially the user experience, which is super sensitive to you and understanding with the haptic feedback and the gloves. It's also about the way in which you interface with it, no? No, I'm not saying you're using it. I'm saying your eye is looking at using your application in a way in which it's intuitive for the human mind. You can't help but be a part of that. Like, that's how you view information.
Yes. No, absolutely. We've done over 5 iterations of our interfaces for developers and investment funds. So it's seamless. So we barely have any onboarding and learning curve. We have to make something similar for the broker investor market. It needs to be like a little bit more streamlined. But the visual of it, the map, the layers, the 3D model, I mean, it's really important that it's very clear.
So what's your future plan? Like, what's the next year? And then, like, where do you guys stand in general?
So right now we're training the AI zoning models. We're training the market intelligence model. And so in the next year, we're hoping to have thousands of cities. If these models, work, right? Because it's like a chain it's a network.
Right. Full stop. Because here's the oracle.
Yeah.
How much data on each city is required for the training model to be accurate?
So it's across the city. So just to give you some stats on the data. So 250 cities, average 240 properties per city with 10 different data points that we gather. We've collected over 600 million data points on the zoning yield, which means what can the parcel yield? Right? So imagine having an intern that does something 600 million times. They get really good at it. So we have to start by training the model on, the first model is called an adaptive model. We literally just feed it hundreds and hundreds of zoning ordinances. And now it should be able to talk. This is next week. We're going to start talking to a model that's an expert in zoning. So that's over 800 gigabytes of data that we have in zoning. And just to give you the reference, ChatGPT was trained on 570.
Damn.
So we have more,
And I heard that's the secret. The secret sauce is just that. You have to have the data.
Yes.
And you have the data.
We're one of 2 companies that has the data at this scale. And I believe we're the only company that has it down to the property of what it could yield. Because that requires 2 levels above just the data. That requires extracting the logic and implementing the logic into each parcel. We believe we're the only company that could do that right now at scale.
And are you currently raising, or what round are you guys?
Yeah, we've raised a little over $5 million so far to do what we built. And now we're raising another round to get to that model intelligence level where we're going to be able to predict how cities will behave.
So if people are interested, reach out to me. I'll connect you.
Yes.
All right. So now, I think it's incredible. I think it's fascinating. I already knew that because I've been grilling you on this for like a couple weeks now since we've met. So I've got some quick rapid fire questions for you.
Okay.
All right. And then that'll be it because you have explained it, I think, perfectly. Okay. Ready? Here's my rapid fire. Where do you hope to see PropTech in 10 years?
I hope that every building that we have and every data point in every building is on the blockchain and being able to be visualized. And the incentive for that is liquidity and transparency.
And people can just trade in and trade out, and it's just so much more liquidity into the real estate marketplace.
Exactly. And you'll be able to see like how much a building is wasting in resources, how efficient it is, and then those buildings will get more funding, and therefore the progress of our cities will increase.
Fascinating, right? Because when the dollars are sort of moving faster towards specific buildings and you're wondering why, you can even see what the market is interested in, right?
Exactly.
Like we have a theory now, everyone wants to be green, but you don't know. But if you did a green building and all of a sudden it got all the investment, we would know.
And that's probably the case.
Is AI going to be our friend or a foe?
Our friend.
Why?
Because it's going to make us faster. It's going to make us understand more. It's going to evolve our capacity to intake information. And that can't be bad.
I agree. And the last question is, look, you are obviously we're super focused on education. Then you were working with the government. Then you went and you take all of these risks. What do you do then? What is the yin to your yang? How do you chill when you're just so motivated in dealing with all of these new technologies and you're an entrepreneur and you're getting after it? What do you do for the flip side?
I go sailing.
Sailing. You can get the girl out of Miami, but not the Miami out of the girl. What kind of boat? We
have a 42 Beneteau.
And what is that? A single V-hull or is it a catamaran?
Hull, yeah, but it's a nice cruiser, 3-bedroom.
So get out on the water.
Spend 5 days.
Well, Olivia, it was a pleasure to have you. Honestly, I'm so happy that you came through, and we definitely have to be looking out for Deepblocks because the change is coming, and we hope that you're that change.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming through. I mean, people, you got to meet people out there that are really changing the game. And we always talk about it. Is it a medicine or is it a vitamin? It sounds to me that this 100% will be a medicine. If you speak about AI, of which she is, you got to think about it. Who owns the data set, right? Then you do a training model on top of it, and that gets the output that you're looking for. She started in 2016, 2017, which means she had to focus on achieving and getting that data. She knew to solve that would help Deepblocks on its way to being commercially viable. Now they're coming out with these tools and these products that are actually making money, and now they're able to now take that training model and will give you predictive analytics as to where you should be investing your dollars. I was talking about it years ago, that business intelligence. Give me actual data and hypotheses from the information that you're collecting so that I can react to, and boom, that's what she's doing. So I would definitely pay attention to what she's doing out there. And to me, this is definitely a technology that's going to make a change. And I got to tell you, since I already believe in these types of technologies, I would be making investments, and we are, in our own proprietary fashion, using technology to assist us in where we invest our capital. If you're not paying attention and you're still, yeah, that makes sense. We are going to truck you and move past you. This is definitely a medicine. That's my girl, Olivia. Deepblocks. Peace.